Welcome to the Airflow Podcast. I'm your host, Rickey Thomas, and this is the place where Kingdom heirs go to be informed and inspired. So sit back, relax, and flow with me. What's going on, Airflow family? Welcome back to another episode of the Airflow Podcast. I'm your host, Rickey Thomas, and I'm excited, obviously, to be back in front of everybody again. But this episode is going to be a little different because there's been so many things that have been happening in our world, and they've really just been weighing heavy on me. And I think part of being a kingdom heir is obviously, recognizing where things are, discerning things, being able to also pray and try to bring hope in a time where there isn't a lot of hope. And so, but I wanted to use this episode, and I'm not saying this would be the only one, but I really want to ask the question, what's going on? Now, one song that and everybody knows it is one of my favorite Marvin Gaye songs, and probably mostly everybody's, but it's What's Going On. Now, that song was written in 1971. I was born in 78, but even as a young kid, I remember hearing it a lot, and it just became a song that I would always like. Of course, I like the melody, I like the beat. But as I've gotten older, the lyrics hit different. They hit different, but we got to remember this song was written 51 years ago, or give or take a little bit. But yeah, 51 years. I can't remember what month it was, but I know it was released in 1971. So here we are in 2022. And for those that remember the lyrics of the song, it's mother, mother. There's too many of you crying. Brother, brother, brother. There's far too many of you dying. So let's just talk about that. Just in that first stanza, in those first few lines of the song, he was talking about mothers having to bury their sons, their daughters, their husbands for some of these women. Talking about brothers, our brothers, and you can say brothers in terms of African Americans, you can say even brothers in Christ, or just, whatever that bond is, there are too many of us dying. And so I think it's important because what happened back then, we're still experiencing that today. And this isn't about race, because there is races involved and there is racism. There are things that are happening because of racism, and we'll talk about that. But it's just really, why are we still dealing with the same problems that we dealt with back 51 years ago? What's going on? He talked about in the second part, Father, Father, we don't need to escalate. War is not the answer. For only love can conquer hate. But sometimes we got to ask ourselves, where is the love? Is the love just for self? It's tough, right? It's tough to look at what's going on in the news. You turn on to your local news, you turn on to CNN. It's almost like every day there's something going on. We've got the war going on in Ukraine. You've got now this recent Tulsa shooting. This is the most current thing. Then you've got, the tragedy that happened in Texas. Then you had the Buffalo incident. And we can go and talk about school shootings in stores, church bombings. I mean, you think about all this. Then we've got a pandemic. Then there's threats of we're going into a recession, so the economy is in trouble. We're seeing interest rates go up on mortgages, for mortgages, I should say. We've got a president who And this is why I'm not big on politics, because there's I understand that the president is a figurehead and there's only so much they can do, but there is so much they can do. And I'm just not excited about anybody who's a president. And I'm not excited about our Congress. I'm not excited about our Senate, and I'm not excited about local politicians. I'm not trying to dog them. I know there's a process for everything, but we have a flawed system. I'll just say that. I'm not anti-American. I'm not anti this or that, but I want to get past the bipartisan. I'm Democrat, Republic, left wing, right wing. Get past all of that. Where can we find commonality amongst us as people? Let's get away from race. Let's get away from religion. Let's just talk about people. What do we need to do as people to get ourselves back to a place where at least we respect each other as human beings? You may not like me, for being something as simple as the color of my skin. You may not like me for, my religious beliefs. But at least there's a common respect that you're a human. You have a right to freedom of speech and religion. But I understand as a person you have feelings. There are things that we all want and desire. We share things across whatever divides we may have, whatever those things are that separate us. We have so many things that we have that can be in common. But it's just it hurts, right? It hurts. It hurts to every time I've got a CNN alert on my phone, and I swear it seems like over the past few months there's been something crazy that has popped off in the world. Now, truthfully, could we say that there were things like this that happened in the world before social media, before the internet took off? I mean, you could say that, and it just took a while for that news to really travel around the world. But we know now it's information overload. That's why I can't sit and watch the news all day. I can't sit on CNN and look at some of the stuff, because you see all this bickering back and forth between different nations, between different political parties, between different ethnic groups. I mean, there's always some back and forth that's going on. And a healthy debate is one thing, but I'm just see people tearing down each other. Then we have a tragedy that takes place, like what happened in Texas last week, and then you start getting people pointing the finger. Well, maybe if this wasn't this, or maybe that was, it always bounces around to different things. Well, if they would have did this, or if they wouldn't allow this group to watch or listen to the music they listen to, or it's the cartoons that they watch, or it's always something, instead of looking and saying, what can we do? We're supposed to be the most powerful nation in the world. Why can't we fix this? And then there's this whole thing now where, well, it's not a new thing, but it's always been around. Gun control. How can we limit access to guns? I think that is a great conversation. I think that's a great topic to look at. But let's be honest with ourselves. A gun sitting on the shelf is harmless, right? Now, this is coming from a person who used to be terrified of guns. I do own a few legally licensed. I own them. And I never bought them with the intent to go out and do harm. Am I dangerous because I have that? No, I have them for protection of my personal being and my family. So does it need to be stricter gun laws? Yes, 100%. I agree. I think, they're talking about, we got President Biden calling for a ban on assault weapons. Okay. So you can ban assault rifles. You can still get access to handguns. This may not be as easy. You got to do background checks. But here's my thing. Are we going to really enforce that? Are we going to go after guns? Is the country really, really ready to fight even the NRA? I mean, are they really ready to have that fight? is that really all it takes? So the thought is we take guns away from civilians. We keep the guns with law enforcement and military. Now, in theory, that sounds good, right? But if you do that, then that pretty much kills the hunting. You don't use ARs to hunt, but when you start taking guns, then how do you pick and choose? Because, okay, I can't have an assault rifle, but I can have a shotgun. I can have a, single barrel rifle. I can have, all these other types of weapons. But we're going to start off by singling assault weapons. Okay, well, maybe that works. But I think there's a deeper issue that we need to address. We should be addressing, and we're not doing it right now because we're trying to go after the low-hanging fruit. And maybe, getting these bans in place, that'll slow down some things, but the weapons are already out on the street. It doesn't take much for somebody to get a hold of a weapon. It really doesn't. An assault, if somebody, especially with the way things are, if somebody really wanted to make some money, there's weapons all out there. Same way that drugs are illegal, but for some reason they continue to pop up and, show up. They get across our borders. There's so many things that we shouldn't have access to, but we have it because it's big business. So the first thing is everybody's yelling that's ban guns, get rid of all guns. Okay. So the people who are responsible will be the ones giving the guns away. But how do you track those guns that have been out there forever and nobody knows where they are? Now, obviously, if they're used if they're used in some type of incident and they are recovered, then that's a different story. But who's gonna willingly give up their guns when there's people walking around the streets with guns that have nothing but bad intentions? Who's gonna give up their right to bear arms? Now, you can say that we're not getting rid of all guns, but that's the start of it, right? Take away the assault rifles, and then let's figure out how we can get some more control. But is that the right thing? I'm not saying it's wrong, but is it right? Or what about let's figure out some programs to help our youth, programs that help with mental health. I mean, programs that are fully funded programs where people can go and get help, and it doesn't matter how much money you have or don't have. But the people who are performing these services are well taken care of, because our mental health is important. I mean, it's cute to have mental health months. It's cute to have, all this awareness and things. But if we're not going to do something about it, then, why sit there and have these months? We can sit here and say that teachers are important, but we don't fund our school systems appropriately to pay them. And they're dealing with so much more now than what they've ever had to. A teacher should never have to go to school, just the same as a student, and think that my life can be taken at any point in time while I'm in school. That's one of the few things I never worried about when I was in elementary school. In elementary school, I was still, up to a certain grade, I was still taking naps on a cot. Elementary school. We were having fun going outside during recess, playing on the playground. And now I've got to do active shooter drills. Like, how crazy is that? And we're like, okay, well, if we ban assault rifles, that'll help. Yeah, it'll help, but we need to dig deeper. I would love to see, and again, from our leaders, our elected officials, I would love to see a manifesto or an agenda or something that's a phased approach of how we could not only get rid of or ban assault rifles or any type of military grade weaponry from being in the hands of civilians. That's one piece. But how do we get more programs to improve upon mental health? How do we get more programs? How do we do things that what gives us more life? And what I mean by more life, how do we get things in our communities that involve more than just how I can make money out of this community? How do we drive revenue into a community? How do we drive skill centers? They used to have these things, community centers. They used to have, different things that kids can get off the streets. They can go study in the arts. They could, play sports, do homework, get tutoring. Where are those programs at? See, one thing I learned as a kid, and I used to be told this all the time, that one of the worst things you can do for a child is give them too much idle time. Because they're young, their minds are going to wander. You have to give them things to do. Keep them active. For me, it was my parents kept us in sports. We were in like the NYSP, the National Youth Sports Program. It was at University of Detroit College that was near the house I grew up in. And we used to go there when we got out of school. For the summer, that camp started like that next week, and we would get up and go there in the morning. We'll be there, from early morning time and come back home early afternoon. But we were doing things. We were busy. We played different sports. We got lunch. I mean, we built friendships. It was a different time. And I understand technology has changed things. There's so many things that have changed, but I've got to ask, what happened to the humanity in the world? Not just our country, but where's the humanity in everything? Why are we not focusing on things that brings us back to being who we are as humans? Loving and caring for one another. And it's all about, now it's just all about, everybody's upset, everybody's frustrated, everybody's on edge. We're talking defunding the police. We've got, police that are on edge. We've got people, just regular civilians on edge. Everybody's on edge. Everybody's pointing out everybody's problems. But there's no fixing going on. And I pray for my kids. I pray for my family. I pray for the world. I pray for this country. I pray because I don't have the answers. But I have to keep myself grounded, and that's how I keep myself grounded, is in prayer. And you almost have to, because obviously you look at everything that goes on in the world, and you see, and it takes something crazy to happen, right? It takes us to have, a shooting somewhere. And then everybody wants to come together and, band together and figure out how we can do it. Everybody's outraged. Everybody's, because it's the newest thing, right? It's the most recent thing that happens. And, there's a lot of talk going on. There's a lot of finger pointing, as I mentioned before. But at some point, we gotta figure out. I know that for me, Jesus is always going to be the answer. But everybody doesn't know Jesus. But as I talked about this a little earlier today, I was on a call for our church, and we were just praying because we have the Pentecost coming up, and I mentioned that because with Pentecost coming up on this upcoming Sunday, it's a time where, for believers, we should really be on fire to witness. We should be on fire. Our lives should be a clear reflection of who Jesus is and what it means to live in the kingdom. So understanding the importance of Pentecost and why it's important for us, and then seeing everything going on, I remember, in my prayer, really just talking about and discussing how our youth are so disadvantaged right now. And I say we, even me, we sit here and we talk about they have access to so much stuff, to get so much knowledge, but they have access to so much stuff and access to so much knowledge. or information, I should say. And so there's good and bad. You know, unless you have the technical, unless you're technically savvy to go and set up parental controls for your kids on what they view online, and there's only so much you can do, right? You can have access to just about anything. Anything. I mean, information is out there at the push of a button. It's at our fingertips. We can become millionaires with the little cellular phones that we have in our hands just by posting content. But when you look around, you see so much. Even with that, it's like people fighting. And I remember at one point it was like a big thing where, people just posting videos of people fighting. Nobody's trying to break it up because they don't want to fear getting beat up. But people people are fighting, people getting shot on camera, and of course they wind up getting taken down. But it's just so much stuff, and you get tired, you get weary. I get tired, I get weary. I'm sitting up here like, man, at one hand I thank God that I don't have a lot of that going on in my family. But there's always something. The enemy is out here, and I say the enemy can be so many things. The enemy can be ourselves, but the enemy is out here really, in full effect, working overtime. This is the time for us to really figure out how we can move forward. And I encourage all believers, you have a powerful tool that you can do from anywhere in the world that you are, anywhere where you are, I should say. And that's prayer. My call in this form, in this podcast, for this episode, and really any episode, is we know all of the things that are challenging us. And I say us, meaning everybody, because everybody gets challenged, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's hearing about little kids getting killed, teachers being killed. Now you're hearing about people in hospitals being killed. And a lot of them are just innocent bystanders. Didn't have anything to do with the attack. But again, what goes on in these people's minds? Why are people not seeing the signs? How do we get people trained to understand if something's not right? If they should be worried about something? How do we get to that point? Because it is a scary world that we live in. It's probably, and I'm just going to talk about from the African American community, there's so many opportunities to make money. We have access to more ways to make money through different and non-traditional ways. And we're seeing wealth at a different level. But we're still out here killing each other for crumbs. Why? Why is that? Everything is about clout. Everything is about getting the bag. Everything is about trying to outdo the other person. It's so much. I mean, again, we can talk about within the community. We can talk about things that are being done against our community. We can talk about things that have been done that is causing the mindset that we have in our community. I mean, the African American community. And I'm switching around different things because, that's why I'm saying this is the What's Going On episode. What's going on in my head? What's going on in the world? Why are we experiencing the craziness that we're experiencing? Now, a lot of this stuff you can look and say this was predicted. This was prophesied in the Bible. I encourage people, read about the end times. Read Revelations. Even if you are not a person of faith, it would probably humor you to read these things. Read the Bible about end times, reading the Revelations, and then look around in the world, look at the news, and tell me there isn't a correlation there. And this was written centuries ago, so again, can't say that oh, this is just edited to. No, these things have been in there for a long time. But I'm gonna back off of that. I just want to understand. I don't want everybody to really take a moment. When you see things like this, how many people really pray? You know, people always say my thoughts and prayers are going out to this person or to this group. I see people post on social media, pray for Ukraine, pray for Tulsa, pray for, there was a shooting in Chattanooga this weekend. We had a shooting in you know, for graduation, we had a shooting in Murfreesboro for you know, during a graduation. All these things going on. It's like, what, you know, you sit there and like, are we praying? It sounds good to say thoughts and prayers, or I'm thinking about you, or this, that, or the other. Or, you know, now I hear people who are not of faith saying, I'm sending good and positive vibes out to you, whatever that is. But when you really just stop and think about it, it's like, are we really praying? Are we stopping and praying for the children or the youth that have been lost for senseless things, senseless murders? I mean, I never got it, you know, and it's almost to the point where our youth are becoming so jaded to death. I remember when we were young. When I was younger, I say we, but when I was younger, you know, we didn't really think a lot about, like, if somebody died, it was. I'll say it hit differently than it does now, because now you hear about deaths, you see them, you hear about them, and it happens so frequently, and it doesn't matter if you're a celebrity or, you know, whatever the status you have. You just, you know, our young people have way too many. I know they still do it in some places, but they have way too many T-shirts with "Rest in Peace" on it with one of their friends or family members. We see it too much. And if it's not because of violence, it's because of drug overdoses, it's because of suicide. There are so many attacks on our youth. Why is that? Because our youth, if they ever are able to band together and figure out, and not just African American, but just in all the communities, if our youth were able, you know, would take a look at the past of the different of our country and the different communities, the different ethnicities, and just see where things went wrong and how they can make it a better place for themselves and their families as they grow, you know, until Jesus returns, you know, to take his people and to take his people back with him, you know, until that second coming. You know, we still have work to do here. And we do. We still have work to do. So my challenge is, for anybody that listens, whether you're, you know, an adult, no matter what age bracket you fall into, you are connected with people. I would just ask you to pray. Pray for yourself. Pray for your family. And you may already do that. But take some time just to pray for our country. Pray for this world. Pray for your state, your city officials, whether you like them personally or not. See, God can use anybody to show the power and glory that comes with his kingdom. God can use anybody. So don't assume that person or somebody that you're praying for, or, you know, those officials, you don't care about praying for them because they're crooked or this or that. That's okay. They're still elected officials. You can pray that the truth comes out. You can pray that God controls the situation and allow him into your heart. But it truly starts at home. It starts with you. Pray in a line. And we need to get ourselves aligned. I say we need to get ourselves aligned if we are calling ourselves believers. It's time for us to not only believe and put our faith in God, but we've got to be able to act and be bold about our witness. The world is waiting for the church. And whether the world knows that or not, they're waiting on the church. Because there was a time when the church was controlling, and they had separation of church and state, but the church had a level of power because there was respect amongst the people within the church and within the government. And they respected that so much that they had those agreements in place. So just think about that. If we as individual, we are the church, each individual, if we just took up the mantle and said, you know what, I'm going to make sure that I pray. Even if I say a 5-minute prayer every day, just to pray for, not only myself, my family, protection, but pray for, our youth, our communities, our leaders. Pray for them. But pray for yourself. Make sure that you're praying and you're repenting and you're doing what you got to do for you. It always starts at home. It always starts within our own house. Are we covering our children, our spouses? Are we covering ourselves? Are we inviting God to take control of our situations and get us back on the right path? Well, are we doing that? Again, I'm not saying you may. Some of you may. But I get frustrated, and I think this is just one of those things that I just had to sit down and say, really what's going on. Let's ask ourselves what's going on. Every time you turn, there's something different that happens. But seldomly do I see just, let's just take some time and pray. Let's just pray and let's figure out, because they're going to go back and forth and fight over this gun thing forever. Meanwhile, there's going to be, let's just face it. And I don't have the statistics on it, but I'm assuming there's somebody being shot or killed by gun violence, probably at an alarming rate. I'm not even going to try to guess and think and say how many times a day somebody is shot or killed from a gun. I don't care what type of gun. And I'm not talking about, military actions. I'm talking about just civilian life. What goes on when we live in a place where we have a shoot first, ask questions later mentality. Where we have some, not all, we've got some crooked police officers who are not serving and protecting. They're being the judge, jury, and executioner. And again, it's some, it's not all. It's probably a small number. But just like anything else, there's always some. There's a level of corruption in the church. There's a level of corruption in our governments. There's a level of corruption in pretty much everywhere we look. And so we've got to be vigilant to make sure that we pray. We have to pray. We have to pray. There's different diseases. Again, when was the last time you heard about monkeypox? Now you got monkeypox popping back up. What's next? Polio's going to have a new strain. You think about it, there's all these diseases or plagues that are coming up. That's why I say this is biblical. This isn't just some movie that people are copycatting. No, this has been prophesied for years. And again, it's a heavy weight. It's a heavy weight. It's a heavy weight for any of us to carry by ourselves. That's why I keep going back to making sure that we stay prayed up. We build our relationship with Christ. And please, I want everybody to be able to have a church home because I do believe, and it is biblical, that we should have times where we come together and congregate and we worship together. There's power in that. But I'm just calling even for the personal relationship right now. Develop that relationship. Because with that, if you can develop that relationship, you'll set yourself up for a life that will be truly, truly wonderful. And it's not to say that we won't have any issues. We're gonna have issues, right? Life is about challenges and tests. And we know we're gonna have those things. But let's really start looking at how the power of prayer can change things. Because whatever goes on, we would already have our cover. We'll be covered. We'll have our armor. We'll be covered in prayer. We'll be covered in wisdom to know what to do in situations. We will have the favor of God to be able to navigate around things and not have to deal with certain things in certain situations, or have the power to go through them. But whatever it is, we know that we can move forward. And if we all start taking that individual approach, just imagine how many things can really change, that the impact. You know, but there's always been these studies that have gone on for decades that talk about the power of positivity. You know, again, I've mentioned this several times on this podcast, but you know, you hear about the story, The Secret, right? And The Secret is just biblically based, but you know, to simplify, whatever you put out in the universe, you attract. Law of attraction. You know, you speak positive things happen. You think negative things happen. You know, power of the tongue, all those things, right? And we understand that. But we got to go back to, you know, imagine if all of us, or a good majority of us, was starting to take that step towards, you know, building a more positive and loving world. Is it going to be opposition? Yes, there'll be opposition from all sides. But imagine if we put down our differences and we join together on a commonality, especially for believers. And I bring back up the power of Pentecost because that's one of the things that the Pentecost, the celebration of Pentecost, brought different people from different cultural backgrounds, different languages, different ethnicities, and when you talk about them having different languages, so you talk about them having different languages, but during the time of Pentecost, the Holy Spirit came down, and it talked about how his disciples, who were from different places, different backgrounds, they all began to speak in tongues when the Spirit came upon them, and that was the language of the kingdom. And so it wiped away the worldly language that they had, and everybody was speaking the spiritual language, speaking in tongues. Imagine the power that we would have in this country, in this world, in our cities, if more people took down the walls and the barriers, and we started really worshiping in public together, showing unity in the body. It's not about how big your church is, how big this is, how many members, how much money you can raise in a Sunday. That means nothing. The true power is in who can assemble true people of God, no matter what color they are. Who can bring people together? Who is the person that can do that? It's not a popularity contest, but really, let's look at how can we change things. I would be a hypocrite if I sat here and said that, you know, I don't believe that the kingdom, the church, the true church. I would be a hypocrite if I said that I didn't believe that the true church, if the true church, Jesus' bride, rose up to where we should be, I'll be a hypocrite if I said I didn't believe that the church had the power to do that. Because the faith that I have says that through Christ, all things are possible. So what are we really talking about? What are we talking about? You know, I kind of went from the weight of everything going on, and this is just, again, a downloading of emotion, thoughts, and just different things to just say, what is going on? What's going on? And so my call to action is to believers. I don't care about what church you go to. I don't care about your relationship at your church or within, you know, whether you're, you know, sort of haven't really left the church, but you just stopped going, whatever, it doesn't matter. This is about God dwelling in you. This is about his spirit being in you. This is about us taking our rightful place. And we can do it we're right here in our homes, and we can start to pray and worship and ask God to send his angels to watch over our families, watch over ourselves, that we have the covering, you know, throughout our whole family, throughout our cities. Are we able to take the time to really talk to God? And it's not, you don't have to come in with these sanctified prayers, but it's literally like I'm sitting here talking into this microphone to somebody that's going to listen on the other end. And as I sit here and as I talk and as I have these conversations, and even when I'm talking now, how long does it take to just speak to God like this, like I'm talking? Some of us, we talk, all of us probably talk to ourselves. Why can't we talk to God that way? So people try to make things so difficult. Let's start with what we can. We don't have the answers to gun control right now. Everybody may think they do. And I hear a lot of people talk about like, oh, we should do this. And I mean, again, ideas are cool, but let's get back to the basics. Let's get back to prayer. Let's get back to even fasting and prayer. Let's get back to focusing on him. There's so much hate. There's so much aggression and evil. That's a spirit. It's a bad spirit. We got to pray. That's why we have to stay prayed up. People are shooting each other and killing each other over, you know, road rage incidents, parking spots. I mean, the littlest things. Somebody said something on social media, on a video or an Instagram post or whatever social media platform you choose, and now instead of having finding out from the source or, you know, having a conversation, it's shooting somebody. I mean, there's stories, just crazy stories. I read, and this was, I think this might have been a couple years ago. It was somebody on Snap. They did a Snapchat story, and I guess there was the Snapchat story came out. It was a kind of a comedy thing. I guess for the person who posted it was making fun of one of their friends, and somehow it got taken out of proportion. And these two guys were good friends. The guy drove to his friend's house and killed him. Then he killed himself because he realized what he did was wrong. You look at the shooter in Texas, 18-year-old kid, still a kid, goes into a school, elementary school, and we don't know the story. We don't know what his intentions were. You know, we heard he told a friend that he's going to kill his grandmother. He did that, and he went to a school and shot all those people. 21 total people, 19 kids, 2 adults. You can't tell me that there isn't a spirit that is in that. for a man to drive, a man to drive several miles away to go to Buffalo, New York, and basically target a black grocery store or a grocery store in the black area and go in there and go on a shooting spree. It's crazy. It's crazy. Going to a doctor's office in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you have a target, but then you shooting other people. You go crazy. It's a different world that we live in. We got to stay prayed up, y'all. What's going on is prayer has not been consistent. I can say that for myself. I'm sure many others can too. But let's just be real. The way to get rid of guns is not say we're going to get rid of all guns. That's going to take some time. Come into a place of prayer and get agreement, and then let's figure out how we can work together. That's why, that's why, I mean, we're so separated. I say we're separated in our community. For African American community, we're separated in the church community. We're just all over the place. The country, we're separated because we got colors. I say colors. We've got different colors. We've got different religions. We've got different languages. It's a mess. And the one thing that I know that we all know works is prayer. And prayer will give us the wisdom we need to make the decisions that are necessary to help get our country, our world back to where, or not back, but to a place where we are all living in harmony. There's always going to be some darkness. Because that's the thing. Wherever there's darkness, whenever there's light, that means that there has been darkness. Light can't exist without darkness. But darkness can't exist without light. So we got to be purposeful to make sure that we're building and shining the brightest light. And that is through our connection with Christ. So again, I want to thank everybody for listening. I know this is a different type of episode. I'm venting a little bit. I might have been all over the place with certain things, but just understand that what's going on is something that needs to be fought not only through our judicial system, not only through our governments, but we need to get in line as believers. We need to fight this thing spiritually. It's time for us to go and this is for believers. If you're not a believer, this message isn't for you. You can send your positive vibes or whatever it is, but this is for people who believe in prayer, who believe in the power of prayer and understand where we need to be going. Because we can't you don't keep fighting the same fight and losing and continue fighting that way without changing your style. You don't. That's not sound strategy. This is a war. This is a physical, mental, spiritual war that we are dealing with. Financial war we are dealing with. And we are not equipped as individuals to do this alone. As believers, we weren't made to do this alone. This is where we have to flex our faith muscles. This is where as the young people say, this is where you flex. This is the time. This is truly the time. So, again, I'm going to let it go because I'll keep talking and going on and on from this. But I want everybody to take inventory, like I said. think about really what's going on. Some of us have a lot going on and we try to block it out. We try to block out the pain, the negativity. And I hear you, sometimes this is better and it's less stressful to deal with that. But it always comes back. It's always going to be there. So it's time for us to stay prayed up, stay engaged and in tune with the Holy Spirit, making sure that our relationship is truly the most important thing. Because without him, everything else really doesn't matter. So, again, as kingdom heirs, we were called to be builders of the kingdom, doers of God's word. And when we do that, we know that we can expect the blessings to flow to us. So, again, I just ask everybody, remain in prayer. We pray for and continue to pray and truly pray for our families involved in all the tragedies that have happened, the folks in Ukraine. Truly pray. Pray for the poverty in this country. Pray for mental illness. That we can finally get to a place where we can get control over our mental health issues. That we can provide services for people in need. That we can develop more material and support to get rid of that negative stigma about mental care, especially in the African American community. We got to erase that stigma of, you're crazy if you go see somebody about your mental health. Well, now we see that you're crazy if you don't go get it. So anyway, I love you guys. I just pray that you continue to flow in what you were created to flow in, and that is being God's best. Stay in prayer, continue to pray, and God willing, we'll be back next week. Love you guys.